All right, so I believe that's everyone in for now, but of course I will continue admitting everyone as they're logging on. But appreciate everyone's time today tuning in. We have a really great webinar with Bethany Klein. She's from Marathon Petroleum Corporation, and she's going to be diving into building a career with purpose and amplifying impact. But before we get started, I know by now we're all Zoom pros. We've been on probably tons of different virtual sessions, whether it's Team or Zoom, but I just wanted to go over a few quick housekeeping items. So first and foremost, as everyone's coming in, you should automatically be muted, but if not, we just ask for you to click the mute button. This helps reduce the background noise and make sure everyone can focus on the presentation and today's content. Now, if you run into any audio issues, sometimes that does happen, we ask that if you can't hear the speaker, try to log out and log back in. Sometimes that does fix a bug that happens through some Zoom webinars. The next thing is if you need help, I will be moderating throughout today's session. So if something happens, definitely click the raise your hand feature. I'll be monitoring throughout the webinar and can chat one-on-one with you if anything arises and you need help. So up next, if you have any questions or comments to Bethany during her presentation, feel free to drop them in the Q&A box. We will be keeping an eye on them, and we've dedicated time at the very end of today's presentation so we can answer as many as possible. So up next, I am super excited to welcome Miss Bethany Klein. She joined Marathon Petroleum Corporation in 2007 after graduating with a civil engineering degree from the University of Dayton. She has spent over 18 years in multiple organizations and roles at Marathon, including 2 career pivots. Bethany started her career managing retail construction and pipeline engineering projects, then decided to pivot into health, environment, safety, and security space, where she then spent several years in roles increasing responsibility, leading a mix of compliance and employee engagement programs. Through her time in the HES&S space, Bethany led programs such as incident investigations, auditing, risk management, management systems, learning and development, enterprise-wide software implementation, and management and corporate governance. So wow, that experience is just incredible in itself. And then in 2021, Bethany pivoted career-wise again by going back to school to earn her executive master's degree in organization development and change at the Bowling Green State University, and then moved into human resources organization at Marathon. Now, as the senior DE&I specialist, Bethany has a responsibility over enterprise-wide inclusion efforts and programming. In her current role, she blends her process and program management skills with leading organizational change, facilitating team development, strategic planning, coaching, and mentoring. Her leadership skills and passion for improving the world around her drives Bethany to support various community efforts as well. She spent 5 years on the board of the local nonprofit Hancock Literacy, was a member of the 2023 class of Hancock Leadership, and is a founding member and former chair of the Findlay Women in STEM organization. Bethany also serves organizations in her local community as a thought partner and by leading activities such as strategic planning, organization diagnosis, and intervention design. Bethany she's married with 2 kids and enjoys spending time with her friends and reading. And Bethany, I just know we are certainly in for a treat. You have such a wide variety of expertise from engineering to now HR and operations, and certainly appreciate your time today and happy to pass it over to you so we can learn more.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Thank you, Laura, for the opportunity to speak today, and thanks to everyone on the line who came to listen today. I'm going to share my screen, not like a big zoomer here, but I think I can do it. Okay. All right, a thumbs up, Britton, if you can see it.
Looks good.
Okay, thank you. So, you may remember being taught way back in like middle school that good presentations either start with a quote or a story. Sounds cliche, but I actually agree. I'm going to start mine with a quote today, but I will be injecting stories throughout our time together. And the quote I want to share is one that has influenced my life at a few different times. It's from a book I read maybe a decade ago. And it is: a spark is a moment when you realize that you have the ability to be part of the solution you seek. So to me, a spark means being the solution, not just whining about the problem, which I spend a fair amount of time doing sometimes. It's taking or even making opportunities for yourself. There have been times when I've raised my hand or, created the opportunity out of thin air because it's something that I wanted. And it's about having the courage to pursue your potential. And I can pinpoint maybe a handful of times in my career that I felt this spark, and it changed the trajectory of my career and my life. So I'll share some of these moments with you today and also share lessons and tools I learned along the way so that hopefully you will be inspired to build a career with purpose and amplify your impact. And you'll see up at the top of the slide, I also included the name of the book that I'm quoting from. I put a little pink book icon next to it. I am big on participants walking away from my presentations with ideas and actions and resources. So there are going to be a lot of those in these slides. And there'll be a little pink icon to help you identify them. Plan on sharing several tools. Some I think are pretty incredible. Some, like this one, are not special at all. But I follow a very simple structure when I design presentations, and it's not original, it's just linear and logical. I wanted to cover this today because I'm going to follow this very literally. I am going to spoil things right up front by sharing what I'm going to tell you and what I want you to pay attention to. And I'm doing this because for me, if folks don't walk away with something today that ultimately leads to inspiring you in your career or giving you ideas for amplifying your impact, I have failed. And I don't want to fail on such an amazing platform. So, just in case I tell you so much today, that you forget the key takeaways, I'll tell you again at the end. So here it is in a nutshell, my spoiler. Get rid of that on the screen. This is my formula for amplifying your impact. So if you know yourself and you can be yourself and align that with a clear purpose, you will make an impact. You can amplify that impact by using stories and tapping into people's emotions. And you can amplify that impact again by inviting others to join you. And throughout the presentation, I'll be sharing those tools, sharing those stories, and you'll see those little pink icons when I'm highlighting specific resources that you can add to your toolkit. So I encourage you to grab a pencil or paper, however you take notes, because those are things that you can explore more after the presentation when you have time. And I also intend on compiling everything into a reference document that I'll send to Britton to share with everyone. So stay tuned. Didn't get that done yet. So I have found that the intentional use of storytelling is an exceptional way to make an impact. So today I'm not only going to talk about amplifying impact, but I'm going to show you by actually using these tools that I'm sharing today. And I want to highlight an incredible storyteller out there named Karen Eber. I'm including the name of her TED Talk and book down here to add to your toolbox. And while I encourage you to explore these resources, I can give you the spoiler again and tell you the most important thing that I've learned. And it's that data does not change behaviors, emotions do. So I'm an engineer. I understand how critical data is to making decisions. I imagine, most, if not all of the folks on the line understand that too. But data alone is not going to change hearts and minds. You have to make people feel something, give them something to remember, something that resonates, and that can change their hearts and minds. So Karen outlined some exceptional questions to explore before you share or decide which stories you're going to share. And those are what's the problem that you're trying to solve? What do you want people to think or feel differently after you share your story or after your presentation? And what do you want people to do differently? I know exactly what I want people to do differently today because it was written in the description. I want you to learn how to leverage your strengths, stay true to your values, and amplify your impact. I do actually have one correction to that objective. I was going to focus on values for the presentation, maybe up until a few days ago, and I changed the word values to self. Because our values are only one facet of ourselves. It's a huge one, especially for me. It is massive, but it's still just one thing. So we're going to use ourselves to make sure we can make that impact as big as we can. So here we go. And I also want to make today's presentation a bit more interactive by using live polling to engage the audience. So if you would, please either visit slido.com and type in this numeric code on the screen, or scan the QR code with your cell phone, and then you'll be able to join the poll I designed for today. And I use live polling at work all the time. And not just when I'm virtually talking to folks on the screen or on the phone, but I even use it if I'm in the same room as my audience, because I found that it's a great way to get in the moment and anonymous feedback, which is usually the most honest feedback, and it's more meaningful. And I'll also share that if you are not able to join today's session live, but are watching the recording, this poll will be closed. So you won't be able to answer those questions, but you'll still be able to see the participant answers that folks are going to be sharing momentarily. And I do ask that everyone please keep their responses respectful and professional. I'm not going to ask you anything too wild, but I still like to include that disclaimer. Okay, so let's jump right into the first poll. How well do you know yourself? Rate your self-awareness on a scale of 1 to 10. And by this stage in my life and career, I can say I know myself pretty darn well, but I didn't always know that much about myself or who I was or the influence that I could make by leveraging those things. So I've done a lot of intentional work to get here, such as personality tests, journaling. I've gone through more than one 360-degree feedback assessment. I've done lots of reading about emotional intelligence and self-awareness and self-regulation. So I'd probably give myself an 8 on this, which seems to be just about the average. I'm happy to see that so many folks, have that strong self-awareness. Looks like we have others who are still figuring it out, and that's totally fine. And there's, it's a job that is never done and that you can always keep working on. So our self is who we are today. It's our strengths, our weaknesses. It's how we influence others, the things we do, feel, and say, our experiences, our identity, our dreams, values, beliefs. It's our gaps, our liabilities, our triggers, in addition to our strengths. Like I said a moment ago, I took a lot of work, but I know who I am. I'm a mother, a daughter, a sister, a friend, a leader, a millennial, a napper. I require a lot of sleep, a reader, and you can't see in my office right now, but there are just shelves and piles of books. Like here's a pile of books. A big reader. I'm an introvert, so it's actually quite easy for me to talk to my computer right now. And I happen to be a pessimist. I know my values. I value humor, courage, learning, continual improvement, building community, justice and fairness, being honest and transparent. I prefer to talk about the elephant in the room if he's in there. I know what I'm good at. I have the courage to say hard things. I am constantly just drawing connections and seeing patterns, and I help others connect the dots as well, and I get satisfaction out of that. I am a pessimist, so I see the glass as half empty, but I see a half empty glass as one that bears endless possibilities of becoming filled. Like it's not going to stay empty. I am dissatisfied with that thing sitting at half empty. We got to fill it up. And then I know what I suck at too. My poker face sucks. I have RBF, which I will affectionately refer to as resting Bethany face. And I've been told to smile more, probably a million times in my life. And never in the history of someone being told to smile more have they ever felt joy and given you a smile, right? I procrastinate. I was literally working on this presentation all last night and at lunch today. I was messaging with a friend that is actually on the line. We share this trait in common, and I think she said it really well. The 11th hour is where my brilliance activates. So, took me a while to finish this thing, but I'm pretty happy with the result. As I get older, my patience gets shorter, and some words of wisdom I found myself living by for the past several years are don't let perfect be the enemy of good. I find, like, if I did that, I never would have gotten through grad school. I never would have completed half my tasks and deliverables at work. Like, things would just sit at mostly good enough and never get done. Perfectionism, something that can plague all of us at times, especially women. So just don't wait for it to be perfect. Chances are it is very solid. And if folks in the audience have any additional tools for helping to get to know yourself, please drop them in the chat and we can try to do a little crowdsourcing today. I listed a few here to add to your toolbox, and that includes the Enneagram. Shout out to any Enneagram 8s on the line. Clifton Strength Finders, Myers Briggs, or other personality tests. And just good old self reflection is a really big one. Okay, so I told you who I am. How about you can tell me who you are? It's your turn. So list those titles, those roles that you're proud of. Let's see. Okay, folks are typing. I always get nervous. Okay. Oh, we have an ally on the line. I love it. Oh, another civil engineer. Great. Friends, wife, daughter, mother, accountant. Ooh, a shapeshifter. That's intriguing. A lot of moms. Glad to see it. And dads. Whoever said nerd, yes. Thank you. Big nerd. I started really embracing that in the past few years. I'm done apologizing or trying to mask that part. Justice advocate, nonprofit work. This is great. Chemists, dog moms, awkward. Yeah. Book lover. Excellent. Could just look at this all day. I'll stop, but this is awesome. Thank you, everyone. A lot of analysts. Shout out to the data folks. Um, and thank you for sharing those pieces of yourself with me. I've loved getting to know you a little bit just on the tiniest level. Um, and now that we've talked a bit about ourselves, I do want to jump over to the purpose piece, which is the other main ingredient for making an impact. And this is the framework. I got the little tool up in the corner. This is the framework I use to ultimately identify my purpose, and it's called Ikigai. It is a Japanese concept blending passion, talent, purpose, and fulfillment. It involves intersecting what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and ultimately what you can get paid for and sustain your lifestyle with, right? And then your purpose is that central point where everything intersects. And you'll notice 3 of these 4 circles have to do with you, which is why knowing yourself is so important. So today, I'll be reminiscing and describing my career through this lens, basically my quest for Ikigai. And as Britton so eloquently shared with everyone, this is my career journey. I popped it onto a slide. The road is not straight. It doesn't just go up. It's kind of all over the place. Um, but all this slide shows you is the what. It's the roles I've had in my career and when. What is not on here is why or how. And I think those are much more interesting and unique and could be the inspiring pieces. So once I had that epiphany while preparing for this session, I have basically spent the last 6 months on a self-reflection journey. Why did I make certain choices? Why did an event make me feel a certain way? What actions prompted reactions? All those things. It's a good old self-reflection. I've been doing that a lot. So how did I land at Marathon? That's where it all started. And my dad worked for the company. He encouraged me to apply. I went to school for engineering, as you know, and that was really hard for me, but I survived. Um, you could probably say, had I known myself better, um, maybe it wouldn't have been the degree or path I would have chosen, but I was, what, 18? Didn't know myself. I was good at math and science, right? Um, it turns out I was good at high school math and science. Um, but again, I got through it. I interviewed at Marathon and a few other companies. Marathon had the best salary offer at the time, so it was like, okay, here we are. Um, at that time in my department, they hired engineers to do construction and maintenance project management. And before then, I had done several internships where basically I was just on AutoCAD all day and I did not love it. So this felt like the exact opposite, like the farthest away from AutoCAD I could get. So I said yes, I took it. So here I am, just a baby at the first stop along my Ikigai journey. Um, what can I say about it? It stretched me beyond my comfort zone. I learned a lot. I was performing well. Um, I was also quite terrified every day at the level of responsibility and authority as I had as a kid right out of college. I didn't love being the only woman most of the time. I've never really been built for withstanding the elements. Let's just say I'm more of an indoor girl, like sit me in here with my books and I can look out the window at the outside. Um, I don't want to come across as ungrateful or like I wasn't good enough at this job. I wouldn't be where I am today without this first role. But I also knew pretty early on that it wasn't going to be my last role either. So one day, a few years into project engineering life, my boss came to me and said, "There's an opportunity to be an HES&S auditor in our corporate group." I didn't even know what HES&S stood for, to be quite honest, but I said, "Yep, yep, I'm in." And then I left project engineering behind. Um, and Britton shared it earlier, but for those who don't know what that is, it's health, environment, safety, and security. And hopefully we have a few HES&S folks on the call today. Um, and you can see here in my little diagram that is not to scale that I spent a long stretch of my journey as an HES&S professional within multiple different organizations and roles. Auditor, incident investigation coordinator, responsible care management system coordinator, the business lead of an incident application, um, and the incident application lead for a huge software project. Just done a lot of different things that were all really interesting. And it turns out I ended up being really good at it. And then I got paid for it, right? I have 2 of these circles in my purpose like fulfilled. And I could apply the problem solving and critical thinking I learned from engineering to our HES&S management system framework. And it was amazing. I got to spend my days just connecting the dots between our corporate standards and regulatory requirements to the actual processes and tasks that employees were doing and how we could improve. And I still learn skills like, or I still use skills like root cause analysis, risk identification, strategic planning, process improvement, data analysis today. And I think those are the skills that set me apart in the human resources space. And it may not look super happy in this bathroom selfie. Remember my resting Bethany face, but I was happy. This was my daughter's school bathroom, and I was there for career day to talk about safety. And as I was reflecting on that day, I remember purposefully deciding to put on all my gear. I didn't have to do that to talk to 4-year-olds about safety. I was just going to say, like, put a helmet on when you're riding your bike, look across the street. But it was really important to me that all the kids, boys and girls, but mostly girls, especially the girls, I mean, to see with their eyes that they can be anything. And, another spoiler, this photo is just a little foreshadowing of what's to come, but it was just a really special moment. So while I had the pivot into HES&S at work, the bulk of my woman friends at work were engineers, and that number just would go down, right? It dwindled year after year. My life mainly consisted of work and family, and while that was more than enough to fill all the hours in the day, still wasn't quite enough. So I have the privilege today of being here talking to a women's organization. So I know that you all understand the power of a group of women and how important it is for us to support each other. But that power doesn't just naturally exist in our systems and the world that we live in. I imagine a lot of the women on the call today may be outnumbered by men on the job or work within systems that just weren't built for you. Might be wearing, fire retardant clothing that isn't built for you, because I've done that. And that's why we're here, why Women of Asphalt exists, to be that support system for women that need it. And I'm thrilled that we have allies on the phone today. So a number of years ago, I was out to lunch with a few of those girlfriends, and we got talking about how we needed a support system, but there wasn't anything at the time. So this was a spark moment for me. Did I just want to sit there at lunch with my friends and whine, which I love to do? I still love to do this. Lunch is one of my favorite ways to spend time with friends and connect. Or did I want to be part of the solution to the problem? And not just be part of the solution, but create the solution. So we researched existing national and local women in STEM groups and identified one we wanted to connect with and support. At that time, we started as an affiliate chapter of a national organization, found other women at work and in the community that wanted to join. We hosted events and started building that support network. And I have an asterisk next to the name Findlay Women in STEM because in 2021 we actually stepped away from that national organization because it just wasn't helping us achieve our purpose. It looked great on paper. They said everything we wanted to hear, but we just weren't feeling it. So we went on to create our own 501c7 organization named Findlay Women in STEM. So I can proudly say I'm a co-founder of a nonprofit, and I told this story specifically when I interviewed for the job I have now, and I'm fairly certain it helped me get this role. So pretty cool. And as you can see on the left, I'm starting to connect all of those things. I'm starting to feel more energized and fulfilled. And then one more thing about leading a nonprofit organization, and I talked about this right at the beginning, is they don't survive unless you are constantly inviting others to join you. So you cannot amplify, a nonprofit organization's impact alone. Storytelling is absolutely another way to engage people and invite them to join you on your mission. You don't just want to spit facts and statistics at people and expect to reach their hearts. Um, and especially if you're trying to reach their wallets in the case of a nonprofit. So share your passion, connect the dots on why their support is so important, why you need them to be a part of this movement. And I also wanted to take a moment to highlight the book that I wrote on this slide, especially if you are leading a team, if you're a leader, or if you're part of a team and you want it to be extraordinary. This book is called Extraordinary Groups: How Ordinary Teams Achieve Amazing Results. It's probably blurry. Yeah, it's got like a red on the cover, little circles of people, but it's a really good one. And then through my network and interest and passion in the area, in 2018, I was offered another opportunity to support women, and this time at work. So it was a larger scale. And we were starting to launch an employee resource groups across the company. And I was asked to join the leadership team of our women's network. So we're in the room together for the first time, talking about what committees and roles we need. And I volunteered for the Data Insights Committee. Again, I know myself, what I'm good at, what I'm passionate about, so I raised my hand for that. And one of our first tasks as that data insights team was to conduct focus groups and then analyze that data and feed it back to members. And this was just so up my alley. It was like the dream project for me. So I'm working on analyzing this data and the stories that women shared. And I saw myself in those stories because I had experienced all those same things, those same challenges, those same subtle acts of exclusion. So when the network chair asked for a volunteer to deliver that feedback to membership, I raised my hand so fast, I almost pulled my shoulder. It was very similar to my presentation today. I knew I had a very unique opportunity to weave together myself, my purpose, and use storytelling to make that impact and inspire action, to be brave and authentic and encourage others to do the same. So just like, back then and today, no pressure. Um, So I was lucky enough to have a photographer present for an experience that absolutely changed my life. Here I am 6 years ago in an auditorium full of colleagues, strangers, executive leaders. People were standing in the back, and I'm up on stage sharing some of my most raw and real moments that I've ever said out loud. I shared earlier that I happen to view that glass as not quite full enough, and that I have the courage to say the hard things. So that's what I did. I, I verbally acknowledged some of the challenges and subtle acts of exclusion that exist for women in a male-dominated industry. And I got a little worked up at times. I got kind of mad. Being an Enneagram number 8, that's like my go-to emotion. Just, I get mad. Because remember, I was reading about all of the same things that I'd been through too. Like when I started my career and was out on job sites, and contractors assumed that my male colleague was a project manager and they would therefore direct their eye contact right to him, even though I was the PM. That I was constantly asked to take notes in our meetings when I'm not an administrative assistant, and I was not the only person capable of listening and typing at the same time. We all can do that. I would get comments about my clothes or my pregnant body. I kept reading these as the same experiences from women. That I shared that I missed out on building relationships and networking with leaders because I didn't go get to play golf, or I had to go home and nurse my baby instead of going to a happy hour, or that people assumed I had to go home and be with my kids, even though maybe I was dying for, an hour with adults and a cocktail. I shared that when I assertively expressed myself, I was called a bitch or told to calm down. And similarly to being told to smile, never in the history of being told to calm down have I ever not immediately jumped into a rage. You know, stop telling us to calm down. We're fine. And you can probably see in this photo on the right, but there were a lot of men in the room. And I recognized the importance of including them and inviting them along in the journey towards gender partnership because we literally cannot get there without them. It takes all of us. So, yes, I took a moment to daylight some of those non inclusive behaviors that women are often on the receiving end of, but then I quickly brought the focus back to solutions and actions that we all can do. The key to gender partnership is that it's mutual. So we all play a part. Women, we can recognize that men might be intimidated or not sure how to get involved or come along. Um, there are men on the call today. Hopefully they were invited or just were brave enough to pop on here themselves. Um, so invite men along and be welcoming. I'm hoping that's what happened today. For men and women, ask how you can be an ally in the workplace or to certain groups, and ask with a listening ear and a sense of curiosity. Educate yourself by reading and consuming information and stories about people not like you. It's an incredible way to build empathy. Um, I have all these books. Like it's how I learn about others. It's how I learn about myself is by reading. So the day before this presentation, when I decided I was gonna go there, lay it all out, I literally invited others. I invited several work friends and colleagues to attend. I even asked my, I even invited my parents because I knew I would need my biggest supporters in the audience. So here's my favorite photo from that day. It's of my husband who works for the company, my dad who worked his entire career there, and my mom who happened to work there for a minute back in like the late 70s. And that's where my parents met. So it was a pretty cool moment. Um, you wouldn't know it maybe by looking at me in this photo because you could probably see the bags under my eyes from the back of the room. Um, but this is a photo of my ideal self. So up until this point today, when I've talked about myself or yourself, I was referring to our real self, who we are today, our strengths and weaknesses, and how we influence others. But it turns out we actually have two selves. There's our real self and our ideal self. Our ideal self is who we could be at our very best, living and working effectively, fully, and happily. And I also view our ideal self as who we are when we reach our potential, which is what I try to do. I'm like trying every day. Um, and I wanted to give a big shout out to the book on this slide as well. I spent my final semester in grad school working my way through this workbook on becoming a resident leader. And it's one of the most incredible self-reflection tools I've ever come across. So please do add that one to your toolkit. So I embodied my ideal self in this moment, and I've been working to be her every day for the last 6 years. Um, I happen to have written down my ideal self in a journal that I kept for a very brief period of time. So I literally found the page and I wrote down the words that were in my diary. Um, my ideal self is a designer of intentional change. She's brave, confident, genuine, passionate, honest. She listens, she challenges, she's collaborative and empathetic. And I actually have evidence that by being myself in this moment and leveraging that to drive intentional change did make an impact that day. I don't usually share this. It's kind of embarrassing, but I don't know why I would let that stop me now. So during this session, I made people laugh. I even made some people cry. I saw in their faces that they were listening and having feelings and being inspired. And after the session, I received dozens of emails and letters in intercompany mail, texts of people congratulating me and thanking me for giving them a voice, for opening their eyes, giving them things to think about and ways to be better, thanking me for lighting the spark that they had inside themselves. And my love language is words of affirmation. So I actually printed out all the messages that people sent me that day, and I reread them when I need a confidence boost. If I need to go do something scary and I am just not feeling brave enough, I'll read some of those things to remind myself of who I am and who I can be. And I might have scanned it this morning. So for our next poll, who is your ideal self? Um, I don't expect everyone to be able to answer this right now, but I was curious if people might have different words on this slide than they did when we were sharing our real self. So for me, so far at least, my ideal self is not somebody that I embody every day. There are daily variables at play, but lots of opportunities for me to reach for my potential. And I encourage you to dream big when you think about your ideal self. I love that your ideal self is confident. So is mine. I don't always feel that, but it's really important. Um, Continually learning, empathetic, passionate, those are great. And I encourage you to find opportunities to be those things. Strong, supportive, compassionate, patient. I told you that's what I'm working on right now. A change maker, being authentic. Yes, like be yourself. I've found that right now, as an example, being yourself gives others permission and hopefully the courage to be themselves as well. And you can connect with them on a deeper level. These are great. What an ideal person this is. Strong. Awesome. So I've spent a few years in my career being a supervisor as we continue along my journey. So official people leader. I know I've always been a leader, regardless of my job title. But there was a time when I was hungry for that supervisor title. And I remember job for HES&S supervisor in our marketing organization came up on the job board. And I went to my manager at the time and I said I was interested in applying. And he sat back in his chair and kind of chuckled and said, "Well, no way. I never would have thought of you for a job like that." Oh, I looked him in the eye and I said, "Well, you should have." Like, that was rude. Only thinking about other folks? Like, think about me. I've shared that I want to be a leader, right? So I applied. I nailed the interview and I got the job. Side note, this happens to be the job where I met the incredible Laura Collins, who gave me this amazing opportunity to speak to you all today. So thank you again, Laura. Um, and I know I'm talking a lot about storytelling today, but I also think that data, good old numbers and figures, are still powerful. So I wanted to ask if you knew that women typically do not apply for a job unless they meet 100% of the qualifications, and that men apply if they meet maybe 60% of the qualifications. I have found this to be true. I've seen it in real life. My husband shared a job posting with me once that I had to be very clear that I meant no offense to him when I asked, "Do you actually think you're qualified for this?" Like, wasn't joking. I meant it nicely, but like, he didn't have any of that stuff. And it wasn't going to stop him. That gap in qualifications never crossed his mind. So pretend this is me. handing the spark to you. If you're feeling imposter syndrome or like you're not good enough, or if you're wanting a change in your career, go after it. From my work in the DE&I space, I do a lot of research. I can guarantee you that your male colleagues are not waiting or settling. So don't take yourself out of the running. Go after what you want. Um, Two more tools for your toolkit in that vein are the Career Contessa website. I found this to be super helpful. It's designed specifically for women who want to advance in their careers. It's full of fantastic articles that you can leverage and other tools. And I've sent plenty of my male friends and colleagues to this site as well. They're just excellent tools for whoever you are. And then a book called How Women Rise, which identifies 12 habits that hold women back in their careers and provides practical advice on overcoming those challenges. So, whether you are a woman being held back by your own habits inadvertently, or if you're a male leader or an ally, it's good for you to learn about those habits and characteristics so you can help be that ally when the time calls for it. Keep it moving along my journey. I'm riding high as a supervisor. Um, I moved into a new organization by this point, and then 2020 happens. I've been thinking a lot about how I wanted to cover these two milestones that influenced where I am and who I am today. And it's just not something that I could really put into words or fit in our time together. So all I'll say is that these were rough to have back to back. Um, I think I was still on lockdown at home because my daughter's school hadn't reopened when the company started going through a big transformation. So teams centralizing, roles changing, doing more with less, just lots of huge change. Um, Even before that happened, the organization I was in was still in the midst of integrating from an acquisition we had a few years prior. So these are photos that I had on my wall at the time. I love memes. I love laughing. I love silliness. But these really captured how I felt in 2020. The photo on the left is my daughter before and after riding her first roller coaster. I'm not sure she remembers this, but she still won't go on roller coasters, so maybe she does. And then the photo on the right is a depiction of the grief cycle. I crossed out the word grief and wrote integration. And if I crossed out that word, I could just call it the change cycle. Um, when I look back at this time in my life, I spent a lot of time looking like little Juniper here after the roller coaster and just kind of looping around in this cycle, between not good feelings. Um, just wasn't good. So this was my spark at that time. It was almost burned out, but it's still there. Um, you may recall at this time, the job market, it was the whole time in history was, I feel like, being called the Great Resignation. People wanting to quit, to stay home, quitting their jobs, going somewhere else, just lots of movement and those huge changes. Um, Leaving my job was not a route I wanted to go down, but I also knew I couldn't stay where I was. Like I was not being my best self. And, you can kind of look at a situation and you can stay in it and try to muscle through it, but I really was not being my best. So, I looked around. I would say the glass was as empty as I'd ever seen it. Like things could be going better. I would have done things differently had I, been a decision maker. Um, and I spent a lot of time self-reflecting, thinking about what I wanted to spend my time doing. So for me, I didn't resign. It was more a great reimagination for me. So I had to dig deep into what I actually care about, what lights the fire inside of me, what I want to spend my time doing. And it's those things that I've talked about today, or hopefully talked about today, such as building community, driving change, learning about myself and others, working with others to co-create solutions and change the world. So I didn't end up quitting my job. Could have been a short-term solution maybe, but instead I played the long game and I ended up going back to school. I wanted to get credentialed in the work that I cared so deeply about. And so that, in the event circumstances changed, I'd be qualified to do the work that I love. So I went back to school to pursue an executive master of organization development and change. During my first class, I had to define what that means to me. And I wanted to share that today because I just doubt many people know what OD&C is. So, in my words, it is maximizing organization effectiveness while also enabling individuals to maximize their own potential and then achieving that envisioned future dream state as painlessly as possible. For another assignment, I finally had to put into words my purpose. And it has to do with the glass just never seeming full to me. My purpose is how I intend to fill the glass. And that is by courageously confronting our imperfect present to design a better tomorrow and start building it today. So I can live this on my own every day, or I can enable teams to do this as a collective, which is what I wanted to do. Um, and whether I start feeling that spark inside of me again, or whether I'm working with teams in order to reach their potential, we have to acknowledge where we're at in the present in order to create that future we want and actually get there. We have to stay rooted in our reality and acknowledge what our reality is before we can change it. So I got another poll question for everybody. What is your purpose? And this question took me years to answer. So I don't expect to see many responses here. But I'm also going to include a little bit of a cheat sheet for you from the book called Find Your Why. According to the author, Simon Sinek, the key to achieving fulfillment starts with understanding exactly why we do what we do. Every organization, every person operates on 3 levels: what we do, how we do it, and why we do it. We all know what we do, right? The products we sell, the services we offer, or the jobs that we do. And some of us know how we do it. It's the things that we think that make us different or stand out from the crowd. But very few of us can clearly articulate why we do what we do. And once you understand your why, you can clearly articulate what makes you feel fulfilled and better understand what drives your behavior when you're at your best or when you're being your ideal self. I think I got to click for this to reveal. I wanted to share the little image as my cheat sheet for folks. Oh, what is your purpose? Prepare subordinates to fill my shoes. Yeah. Um, the contribution that you're making is to prepare them. I think this person recognizes they're not going to be here forever. So they want to prepare folks for when they hit it. Someone else's why and purpose is to give their best so that they're content with every day. I love that. That's something that I self-reflect on a lot too. Like, why aren't I fulfilled, or what could I do to get that feeling? Another person's purpose is to design and maintain and build an environment so that our community's safer. That's excellent. Safety is huge. Um, you know, Physical safety, yes, and even psychological safety. Yes, learning so that they can keep moving up in their journey. That's great. To keep things moving though, I don't know how much time I have left. I'm almost done. Um, and we're finally to the last stop of my career journey, or at least the part that has been written so far. During my second semester at school, a role in our DE&I team was posted at work. And that happened to be the time I'm writing in my journal for school. So I actually documented my thoughts in real time when I saw that thing posted. So dear diary, OMG, a job is posted that aligns with my purpose and my potential. I feel confident that I could leverage both my previous experience and the degree I'm pursuing to drive positive change. And I'm looking at it as a challenge that could boost my potential while living my purpose. The dream. I was so excited. And remember, I know myself and I just learned who my ideal self was. So being positioned to reach my potential was really important to me. And if I had thought for a moment that maybe I was not qualified for my first supervisor job or other jobs I had that I mentioned earlier, and I had spent years in that field, by the way, so I was qualified, but I was certainly not traditionally qualified for this one. So I went back to my notes and my interview prep that I had done before applying to the job, and I wanted to share those key items with you today. Because I'm just going to go ahead and assume that maybe there's at least one person on the call who might be considering a new position or a pivot. And I wrote career pivot here at the top, but the same could be said for any job or position or project or goal that you want. And I wrote connect the dots here because literally sometimes you have to spell out the answers to these questions, whether it's for yourself or for the hiring manager. Don't they're not going to automatically look at your resume and be able to connect your experience to, everything they want this job to be. So draw those connections for them. And here are the big questions I asked myself and that I share with everyone who asks me when they're applying for a job, whether it's friends, coworkers, or my mentees. And they are, how could the experience that you have translate to the new role? How would you tackle any gaps in your qualifications? For example, the DE&I role said a requirement was to have an HR degree, and I obviously didn't have that. I maybe had the furthest thing from that. But I was pursuing a master's in organizational change, and I knew that's exactly what we needed for this role. What's your competitive advantage? What sets you apart? For me, it was that I was not an HR person. I was an engineer who worked in a lot of different organizations, leading processes and programs, changing organizational culture, and continually improving things. I knew how to run big projects, collect and analyze data, examine root causes of issues, all of those things that I would think would be helpful in the role. What do you have that the hiring manager may not know she needs? I pitched the OD degree that I was pursuing as learning the skills to future-proof the organization. With the speed of change, the speed of technology, globalization, the way the world's moving, we need to be able to maximize collective potential and get there as painlessly as possible, right? And then show them who you are. Demonstrate your purpose. Don't just say the words, but show them. I made it extremely clear to the hiring manager that I'm passionate about inclusion and I'm not afraid to have hard conversations. I probably picked up my diary and read from it. I quoted a book that I was reading that I thought really well articulated how I felt about the role. So I read that to him. I shared why I went back to school and how important all this work is to me and how I have a unique set of skills that he needs. So it took like 6 months of interviews and conversations and waiting patiently. but I eventually ended up on the team. So here's me at my desk. Following year, I graduated as a Master of Organization Development, and I completed the framework that I've been working on achieving for almost 20 years. I didn't know it at the time, but I did it. Uh, and I wish I smiled like this every day and that everything was sunshine and rainbows, right? Um, and I knew it wouldn't be easy to pivot from what I was doing into people space. Well, wow, this work is hard. I can literally go from looking like Juniper before the roller coaster to after the roller coaster, like multiple times in one day. Um, the glass is half full, it's half empty. Sometimes somebody took it and threw it across the room, um, and it's broken in pieces. I have to remind myself daily that I wanted to live my purpose, and I am. I'm literally courageously confronting our imperfect present in order to design a better tomorrow. I'm doing it. But wow, it can be exhausting in the world today. But no one ever said it would be easy, and I've never been one to shy away from hard stuff, so it's all good. And here we are at the end. So I'll tell you again what I told you. Knowing yourself, living your purpose, you will make an impact by doing those things. You can amplify your impact by leveraging stories to engage people's emotions and inviting them to join you. Go. So this is the final poll question. I hope it's a little easier than the purpose one I just hit you with. But this one might not be super easy either. What's one action you can take after today to get closer to your purpose or amplifying your impact? I feel like I threw a million things at you today. Tools, books, reflection questions, like lots of stuff. That's the type of scenario where I'll freeze up. Just too many things. I don't know where to start. So just pick one, and it can be small. What can you start today? Journaling, write it down. Find your why. Just start. Take that time to write down your purpose. Like I said, that took me years. Reflect on who you are and your ideal self. What do you need to get there and be that ideal person? Oh, embody Bethany. Thank you. Um, Self-reflection, write it down, embrace learning. Like I I low-key mentioned I barely got out of college alive. Um, but when I went back to school as an adult, I realized I love learning. Like I love it. Teach me something new. I want all the information. Um, so I love that one. Accept your RBF, right? This is what my face looks like. I can still do all the things with it. Um, Invite others to join more. Sure. And I intentionally said the word invite in this presentation because you can't force people to come with you, but you can invite them, include them, give them that opportunity, and let them say no. They might say no, and that's okay. Um, Find your why, fill in those circles, connect those dots for yourself. Those are great. Those are great. Thank you, everyone. And I probably went over my time. But with that, I want to say thank you. Thank you to Laura for inviting me to lead today's conversation. Thanks to Britain and Women of Asphalt for giving me the platform today, setting me up for success. Thank you to everyone who attended and who engaged with my polling questions. Learning about the audience and what they're taking away is always one of my favorite parts. And I don't love email. Uh, it's not my favorite communication channel. So if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I would absolutely love it if you feel so inclined. But I don't need any more email. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, Bethany. I'm laughing because yes, LinkedIn is such a great form, and the resting Bethany face. I've got to steal that because I have a B name too, and it wasn't until a couple years ago somebody told me I had that, and I didn't believe them until they showed me a picture. So it seems like I'm in good company, and of course,
Yeah.
some of our members they had me cracking up with that. But Bethany, thank you so much for your time. At this
Yeah.
point, we're going to kick it off with some question and answers. So if our members have any questions they'd like from Bethany, just put it in the chat for us. Um, I have one kind of in mind that I wanted to just kind of kick us off with. I can only imagine going back to get your master's degree, being a wife, having two kids. How did you juggle that? Because I'm sure it was much different while you shared being an engineer and that education was hard. It was probably a much different phase in your life, and you had to probably juggle more responsibilities. And what was kind of that work life balance? Was there any during that point? I would just love to kind of hear about that.
Yeah. I appreciate that question. And, it's always one that gets asked for probably women's groups and women, presentations about women's. I'm not sure that if it were all men, if we would even be having the conversation. Um, but yeah, I had to very purposefully make it all work. And it started with clearly defining my purpose and goals. Like, was I there to get all A's and be the smartest person? Or was I going back to learn as much as I could and simply graduate? And it was the second. I hadn't seen all A's since high school, so that was just not a goal of mine. Um, I had to set clear boundaries. If I was on a dreaded group project, um, I would let my team know right up front, I can't hop on the phone until I put my kids to bed. Like, I can't join you until after 8 o'clock. Um, and same with my family. Like, hey, I'm gonna go to my daughter's cross country race, but before and after that period of 5 minutes when she's running, I'm gonna be reading. I'm gonna be in the car with my highlighters. Um, I learned to call it a night, like, quickly. Um, I was up staring at these slides till 10 o'clock last night. I wasn't happy with where it was, but I know myself, I'm a napper. I need my sleep. So I just needed to quit wasting time. I went to bed. Like, I'll figure it out tomorrow. Um, and then I learned to ask for help if needed. Um, just everybody wants you to succeed. I didn't feel like that in engineering school. It was very like dog eat dog, like I want to be at the top of the class. You didn't understand that? Wow, you're an idiot. Just not not a nice environment. But for grad school it was very different. Like, everybody wanted you to succeed, so I would ask for help and voice what I needed. Um, and then one other thing, I I didn't ask my husband's permission, right? Like, I didn't need to ask him, hey, can I go back to school? As soon as I mentioned it, he was all in and so supportive. But what I did have to do with him is we had to um like rebalance our roles at home. I was the default parent. I did a lot of the little kids, can sometimes be attached to mom. So I was that person. And then suddenly I couldn't be because I had to do homework or I had to go to class. Um, and he did amazing with rebalancing with me. And I have one more thing on work-life balance, and that it is a juggling act. And I didn't come up with this, but I think about it a lot. You're juggling everything, right? Some of those balls are rubber and some are glass. So which ones are glass, meaning you can't drop them? Like, and which ones will keep bouncing a little bit and be fine if you do drop them? So when I was in school, going to my kids' activities or being there for bedtime was a glass ball, like non-negotiable. I love bedtime. I love books. I love snuggles. Like, that's what I'm doing. Getting an A on every homework assignment, not not what I needed. I remember very intentionally being like, I was doing an assignment with one other person. I gave about 70%. I wasn't going to give any more. We got a C on the assignment. Like, and it is what it is. I moved on. So yeah, and those choices are fluctuating every day. I take things one day at a time.
That's really good. I have not heard about the glass ball, but that is really good. I'm gonna have to take that in my day to day as well.
Just
Um,
identify which ones are which.
yeah, 100%. So there's been a couple that come in the chat. Have you ever professionally had to advocate for yourself? And if so, can you kind of share what that experience was like and have any advice? Was there a time when to advocate for yourself? And then is there a time maybe to kind of take a step back and not advocate for yourself?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and I think I have advocated for myself, and the biggest piece of advice is probably to prepare, like read articles, practice, get feedback, like think of what questions could come at you or what challenges you might receive. Like think of all that ahead of time. Um, when I went back to school, our company offers some tuition reimbursement, but I wanted to pursue a degree that was not in my field, right? So on paper, an advanced HR degree was not exactly directly correlating to health, environment, and safety on paper. Um, so I had to go seek my senior VP's approval, and that was scary. Um, and advocating for yourself can especially be scary when, for example, learning is not a core value of everyone's. Um, and you're talking to someone that has had different experiences than you. Um, they won't get it. So you really need to, I had to connect those dots. I did my best to tie the new skills, that I would earn and obtain to the organization and our future. Um, I'm not sure anybody could say that change readiness and organizational effectiveness, of teams is not critical, but I'm surprised sometimes. And maybe the piece of paper was signed reluctantly, but it was signed, and I got to go after my goals. Um, I didn't always do this, especially when I was young, but I raise my hand if there's something that I want. I've applied for several jobs in my career that I did not get. It sucks, right? Like everybody wants to be told, yes, you are the one. Um, But even still, not getting those jobs, what I did get in those situations is my manager's attention. I gave a little signal of, hey, I'm hungry for more. I'm not going to be here forever. Like, I'm going to go for stuff that I want. So at the very least, I've sent that message to people. Um, and this one's especially for women, I think, is don't get in your own way of achieving your goals. Maybe someone else will get in your way and tell you no, but don't you dare do that to yourself. Like, okay, you don't meet 100% of the qualifications. So what? Again, like there are people going in there, maybe meeting 10%. Like, don't get in your own way. Um, when not to advocate for yourself. If you've already learned the hard way, like not to go barking up a certain tree, don't. Like, don't do it again. Um, I've done it again and I've gotten in trouble. But look around and get creative. So, what are you really trying to achieve? And are there other ways to do that? So, if your goal is professional development, right, you ask to go to a certain conference or go seek a degree, and that answer is no, what are some other ways you can get development? There are plenty of other ways. Maybe not plan A, maybe it's plan D, and that's okay.
That's really good. We have a member, Linda. She's curious if you're open to opportunities to speak virtually to other women's groups. And so not sure if you are, but yes. Okay, so we will just share with Linda to connect with you on LinkedIn
Perfect.
and hopefully you can make it happen. So
Love
going
that.
down the
Thank
line, we
you.
have about two other questions. What are some ways that you've overcome barriers, especially in a male-dominated industry? You know, you mentioned having that engineer background. You were close with some female engineers, but at one point, maybe you didn't have some females, in your office or in your corner
Yep.
as much as the male counterparts.
Yep. Um, Certainly in a male dominated industry, even if right now, I'm in HR, there's a lot of women there. It's awesome. Um, but oil and gas is still very male dominated, so I'm still there. When I look back on ways I've overcome barriers, I forced my way in if I could. And I mean in different ways depending on the situation. It might not feel natural, but I did try to build rapport and get along with folks that I worked with, even if it was mostly men. I think it was my third day of work ever, and I realized I had to learn how to golf. Like, not something I wanted to do. I said I'm not like an outdoor person. I really hate heat, right? Golf's like a summer thing. I really didn't want to do it, but I did. And I built those relationships and, kind of demonstrated that I'm part of the team. I've played fantasy football before for more than one season. Even though I hate watching sports, I don't know anything about it. Um, but I knew that, that's how the team's getting together. That's what they're doing. Um, I won that season, by the way. And then I took it one step further and I became the commissioner for a fantasy bachelor league, like the problematic TV show, The Bachelor. And then I invited all the boys to come and do that. So I forced my way in and then invited them as well. Um, I try to find friends and allies whenever I can. Remember, I created Finley Women in STEM because it wasn't there. Um, I set up coffee and lunch with women or different leaders that I admire, and I ask them for advice. Um, and then I ask for feedback. If there's a barrier and I, didn't achieve something, I got overlooked for a job, whatever, I didn't get it. I ask for feedback and I demand that it be specific. Your boss or your coworker saying, "Oh no, just you're good, just keep doing what you're doing." Like that is inadequate. Um, so identify someone you can trust, be upfront that you're looking for constructive and developmental feedback, and then invite them to, the presentation you're giving or to review your deliverable. I ask my boss all the time, like, can you look over this email? I'm nervous. I don't want to mess it up. So I ask her, review your resume, whatever it is. Get that specific feedback to help you overcome those barriers.
For joining us today. I know we're all very busy, but certainly appreciate you all taking a moment out of your busy schedules to tune in. And Bethany, thank you so much for taking your time to share just your journey, your unique experience from engineer to now kind of HR and operations. You're certainly kind of what I would pin as a unicorn, to go from engineer to operations and HR. It's certainly unique, and we just appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. No, I've really enjoyed just looking back and trying to articulate, you know, all of those experiences. So thanks everyone for listening. I talked a lot.
No, we loved it. And listen, if some of your colleagues had to jump off, a little early due to meeting commitments, we are putting this on our YouTube, and we'll be sending out this recording link and some resources. So stay tuned for that. We do have a webinar upcoming in November. I've put it in the chat if you're interested. And without further ado, we'll let you get back to the day. But thank you all, and thank you, Bethany. Goodbye.
Thanks everyone.